Welcome to. Okay. Great shot. This is the Great Shot Podcast, a Cracked Racquets and Tennis Channel Podcast Network production. My name is Alex Gruskin. On tonight's show, we've got another edition of The Deciding Point, our weekly breakdown of everything that happens across the Division I college tennis world. Of course, here on Tuesday nights, we break down all the Division I women's action. But of course, over the next two nights, we have the opportunity here at Cracked Racquets to finally break down our opening weekend of play from the Division I NCAA team event. What an exciting, dramatic, compelling, exceptional weekend of tennis. All of us college tennis fans were treated to. Of course, we've got another exceptional weekend on the horizon with the Super Regionals or Sweet 16s impending over the course of Friday or Saturday, excuse me. But again, we got a lot of stuff to discuss here on today's show. Recap what happened, preview what's ahead, of course. Joining me to help me do all of that is the man who has joined me each on and every week on this show. Of course, a man you all know best as the returning champion here on our Cracked Racquets podcast, the founder of the No Ad blog and podcast, and of course, our dearest friends, co-host of the Deciding Points. It's John J. Parsons. Jay, hey, great shot. Welcome back to the show. Weekend number one of the NCAA tournament in the books. Hangover abated, my friend. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm still adjusting to the multi-weekend NCAA format with this super regional, appetizer, entree, and dessert, if you will, three-course meal. So I'm still adjusting to it. I'm used to now going straight to Orlando or the final site. But yeah, is this our penultimate episode of Live Deciding Point?
That's a great question. It really just depends on the scheduling over the course of the NCAA tournament.
No,
We got,
what do you mean? It definitely is,
well,
right?
why couldn't we go live while there?
Well, that's penultimate, second to last,
Yeah,
right?
but
So,
but aren't we going to record next week after the
oh,
Sweet
I just meant
16?
like live. Yes, but that's the last one, right? And then otherwise, we're in Orlando, like we're there.
Yeah, but it's still deciding. It hasn't been decided. I guess that's a battle of the
Oh,
nomenclature, but
I
yeah.
just meant, our Tuesday night slot.
I see what
Yes,
you're saying. Yeah, I guess this is the
we are
penultimate show.
rounding the end.
That makes me sad to say at the same time for super producer Daniel Westoff's health. That's probably the best thing for all of us. But yeah, I mean, look, it's the NCAA tournament. This is without question the best month of the year. I said this last week. I'll say it again. Between this, Rome, Madrid, the French Open, pound for pound, May's the best month on the tennis calendar. And of course, again, we got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. We had some upsets, host seeds going down, not just, again, seeds ranked 9 to 16. But no, for the first time, we're going to have a non-top 8 seed host one of these super regional matches on the women's side. Obviously, UCLA providing the most dramatic result of the weekend. Stunning 4-3 victory at Duke. We'll talk about that. Auburn's 4-3 victories over FIU, over Miami. We'll run through how all the top seeds look. Try to be pretty efficient with that because, of course, there's no time to rest. Super regionals ahead, Sweet 16, 8 fantastic matches. Of course, Jay and I want to offer our thoughts on each of them on tonight's show. Yeah, jam-packed episode for all of you college tennis fans to enjoy. Of course, before we get to it, couple of things. A, in preparation for the impending May Madness, we know it's our job here at Cracked Racquets to get all of you prepared. As such, we're running back one of our favorite segments, one of our favorite bits. It's our NCAA Sweet 16 press row. I'm going to mix things up a little bit this year as opposed to just speaking to head coaches. I'm going to speak to one representative from every team. Maybe it's going to be an assistant. Maybe it's going to be a player. Maybe it will be the head coach. I want to get insight into all of these teams. I want to prepare all of you for the impending action. So if that intrigues any of you, be sure to check out our Cracked Interviews podcast feed. Shout out to super producer Daniel Westoff, churning those out at an exceptional rate. Of course, also a massive shout out before we get started to all of you fans who tuned in to our coverage of the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Westoff, Dalton, who do so much behind the scenes to make all of this possible. And of course, Perry Shinen, who helped steer the ship throughout the course of the way. And again, those are long hours. Those are long days. Each of them were exceptional. Really appreciate all that they have done. Of course, we keep rocking and rolling here this weekend, not just with the super regional coverage, which we'll have Friday and Saturday on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. We're hitting D2. We're hitting D3. We're going divisions wide with our NCAA tournament coverage. So starting this Friday, we'll have Cracked Racquets broadcast featuring some sort of NCAA coverage every day from this Friday through the end of the month. So if you want to see anything as it relates to the college tennis season, we'll have it for you here at Cracked Racquets. Really excited to announce that news. Very excited to gear up for the month ahead. What did I do as warm up for all of those broadcasts, Jay? I scheduled 32 interviews in the 3 days prior so that, to make sure I'm rocking and rolling. Any thoughts on those things before, of course, I plug our dear friends at Tourna and Ellesse?
Well, you were right. I mean, those are very long hours this weekend. So shout out to you and the team for pulling those hours. Look, I love press row. I love it better when we get the final site Sweet 16 because it's I get to listen to everything. And then now sometimes you have to listen after they've lost their Sweet 16 match. It's a little uncomfortable. But no, I love that you're mixing it up. I love that we have assistant coaches on. I love that we have players on. I love the idea of one representative. It's great to hear. And I would highly encourage people to check it out. Either listen to your favorite team or multiple, listen to your opponent that you're going to face. Always a really good listen. There's some fun questions in there, I think, as well. So I'm excited to dive in.
Can I also give a little tease about John J. Parsons' contributions to this year's press
Sure.
row? Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the tease is I'm not doing all 32 episodes, folks. I guess I should have said I scheduled 31 interviews because you're going to get some John J. Parsons content, at least one that we have right now on the books as you listen. So be sure to check those out. Cracked Interviews podcast feed. You can find a link to all of them on our website, crackedrackets.com, which our super producer, Daniel Westoff, was kind enough to post in our chat here tonight. So again, any of that intrigues you, be sure to check it out. Shout out to all of these representatives because they've been very generous with their time. And I think I've done 11, 12 interviews, something like that so far. Not a single one has disappointed. So I promise you'll all enjoy that. Of course, I also promise you'll enjoy everything provided by our dear friends and sponsors at Tourna and Ellesse. If you haven't already heard, Tourna Tuff, it's taken over. That Tourna grip, again, the latest iteration of the Tourna grip, which of course has been a staple in the tennis world now for multiple generations. It's going to get more durable as you play. It's going to get tackier as you sweat. And of course, it's going to retain that trademarked iconic blue color that can be seen on the rackets of so many college players, pros, people throughout the tennis world. We're so grateful for the support we get from our friends at Tourna. The least we can do, ask you to support them as well. Be sure to check out Tourna wherever you shop for your tennis supplies, and be sure to turn to them as an homage of their support to this show. Of course, a massive shout out to our dear friends at Ellesse as well, who have been with us since the beginning here this season. And, from Dave Emke, the entire team at Ellesse, we appreciate their support. We appreciate the high quality products they're providing. Again, you will feel good. You will play better, decked out in Ellesse gear. You'll feel comfortable as well. I promise. You can have access and look at their entire catalog by clicking on the link in the description to this episode. Again, a massive thank you to the support we get from our friends at Ellesse. Learn more by clicking on that link in the description to this show. With that said, again, Jay, much like in our NCAA tournament draw preview, I want to be efficient here tonight with our recapping because, look, there are a lot of good first round matches, and I meant to text you this. I'm going to ask you for your favorite first round matches at the end of this exercise before we turn to the super regionals. But there are a couple things we do have to take a deep dive into. We do have to break down. And obviously, first and foremost, on top of everything, is the result we saw at Duke. Obviously, this is a UCLA team that it's UCLA. We know what they've accomplished. They have won a national championship in the past decade. They have put Jennifer Brady from, again, where she was her freshman season into an Australian Open, I believe,
Yeah,
final and
final.
a U.S. Open semifinal as well. It's UCLA. It speaks for itself. That said, certainly these past 2 seasons, they have been on the outside of the top 16, not the top 8. They have been the outside of the top 16 looking inwards coming into the weekend. They were 13-7 and overall. Yeah, they had impressive wins over Pepperdine, over Ohio State, but those were really the only two marquee victories you could turn to. You couldn't point to the fact that we saw them at the national indoors because they didn't just lose kickoff weekend. They lost 2 matches. A loss to FIU that aged well this weekend, let the record show. But, they lost 2 kickoff weekend matches. They've been chasing and playing from behind ever since. They were playing from behind in this match. They dropped the doubles point, and let's be clear, Hansen Wagle served for that double set at the number 1 spot. I believe they're up 6-5 there. Beck and Coleman ultimately end up breaking, and no Kamura in the lineup for Duke, which I'm sure we'll discuss here tonight. Again, Wagle Hans serve for it. They get broken. Duke plays a perfect tiebreak to secure that set and secure the doubles point 7-6. You then have Beck, Jackson, Schvetz all taking first set. Schvetz is up 6-love, 3-love. There was every opportunity for this UCLA team to just roll over. And I think that's where we have to start with our analysis of this match. It's not just that they won. It's that Hansen Wagle, after that disappointment in doubles, they both come back. They win in straight sets. They get a first set and a really competitive first set from Sasha Vagramov, the senior, who has struggled throughout the course of this year, particularly given where she's played in the lineup and what she's done in the past in her career. And then obviously they have the freshman in Lukemeyer, who's down 6-love, 3-love to Brianna Schvetz and is not looking competitive in those first 9 games. And despite all of those circumstances, this team somehow, sorry, listeners, young people, I apologize, this team somehow fucking wins the match, Jay. This was incredible tennis. What was your reaction to it all?
It was a stunned reaction. I feel like I woke up the next day still in shock. It was very, very surprising. I mean, you talk about the moments we've seen from UCLA and the win over Ohio State, the win over Pepperdine. We've seen flashes of that, but then they go to the Pac-12 tournament in Ojai and they get routined by a very good Washington team, but it wasn't competitive at all. And so that fight and competitiveness that you saw and just talked about in this Duke match, where we're back up against the wall, they came back. You hadn't really seen that, at least in the last few weeks. So that was surprising. And, they are 3,000 miles away at Duke late at night, which I think benefited the broadcast a little bit. It got primetime viewing for the broadcast, but, they're at Duke, they're away late at night. And all of those players that you've talked about have struggled this season, right? There's really only one player on the...
Can I just quickly, before you get to that, because you bring up a point about the late at night, and I'm just curious on your perspective. This is one of the takes that I've been brewing. I think there's something to that match going late. The fact that the Duke men took a little longer to close out their match and then that match got pushed back. If you are not in California, if you have access to an indoor facility, you're playing nighttime tennis inside. Like, as someone, it's so stupid. Sorry, everyone. The reason Rothman and I sucked so badly in our nationals final, and shout out to the women who carried us to that title, is because I have played under the lights twice in my life prior to that national final. And I just do wonder, because that match got late and they had to play it under the lights. And playing under the lights is not an issue when you go to UCLA. That's how you play tennis at night in California, outdoors under lit courts. I do wonder if that played a factor, Jay.
I don't know. I mean, Duke in particular has had many a thrilling, NCAA wins. I mean, UCF was under the lights. Their match against UNC in 2021 was under the lights. Their win over NC State last year was a late night quarterfinal. Like, this team has played a lot under the lights. They have lights there. If anything, it was just a benefit that being on the West Coast, that it wasn't didn't probably feel like a late night for them. again, look, if you want to make a run in the national title, go practice under the lights
Sure.
because you're going to have to win a match under the lights.
Yeah.
I don't know if that really became a factor. If anything, you would think it would help Duke because with the delay, who's going to be more comfortable waiting around at the facility, maybe going back to their room for a quick minute? Like it should have really helped Duke, not hurt them. So I don't know how much of a factor that was.
Fascinating point. Players who were struggling, carry on.
Well, the whole UCLA team, with the exception of Fangran Tian at the number one position, who was undefeated prior to this match. But look, and that's what was so remarkable. You had Anne Christine Lutkamaya playing Brianna Schvetz, a fifth-year senior, against a freshman, and coming back from 6-0-3-0, a remarkable performance from every single player in that UCLA lineup, up and down the lineup. Looking at that match, they probably felt like they needed to take doubles and they probably needed to take number one. They didn't do either. They're down, that's 2-0, and they still come back and find a way to take 4 of the 5 singles matches remaining.
That's exactly the biggest storyline. Tien, the freshman, undefeated in dual match play. And look, we knew the battle between her and Beck was going to be a toss-up. She goes up an early break. Beck gets it back, never looks back. And it was fascinating. When Schvetz from 6-0-3 up 3-0 up started to struggle, you could see a gear switch in Chloe Beck of, I'm getting off the court right now. And God, was she impressive, as she always is throughout the course of the match. Look, again, no Cam Morra for Duke. Everyone slides up. Emma Jackson did her thing, as she so frequently does, and she's been playing at 3 all year long, so that's a comfortable position she's comfortable in. I mean, again, to your point, like, I think the other than Hanson Wagle and the doubles point more broadly in Tien, every player in this UCLA lineup is right around 500. Wagle's a little bit better than that, and Hans is like 11-8. Like there's a lot of 11-8s across the board for UCLA. They
against, mind you, not the toughest competition. They didn't make indoors. They've played, a less than elite Pac-12 this
less than
season.
20 matches.
Right.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And again, they go on the road. They're down 6-0. A freshman is down 6-0-3-0 to a former top 20 player in the country. That turnaround was remarkable. Again, that match was on Schvetz's forehand, and credit to Luca Meyer as a freshman, just asking every question, staying in the fight physically. She did her job. Vagramov was a different story. She was swinging freely, as was Bryce Golova. And I had one coach tell me it was really high quality tennis down the home. I think it was Boomer Saya on the Cracked Interviews podcast, where he was complimenting the tennis down the home stretch. That was a really fun match across the board. And I'll tell you what, if that it's West Coast, I'll admit it. I don't watch as much as I should of West Coast tennis. If that's what I've been missing with UCLA all season long, like, Jay, you're a West Coast correspondent. Why didn't you tell me? And it's just again, I don't want to say it was an out-of-body performance, but this is the on-paper team you expect from UCLA. And talk about clicking at the right moment, Jay. Any final thoughts on the Bruins front coming out of this match, or are you ready to move on to the Duke side?
Yeah, I think we can talk about the Duke side of the equation.
Yeah, all right. I love Jamie Ashworth. I love Danny Leitner. I love many of the players associated with this Duke program. It's also our job to be honest. This is a disaster, Jay.
Is that it?
I don't have a question.
Yeah.
That's it. It's that simple.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a match you can't lose, right? At home, under the lights, with such an advantage, right? You knock out, in doubles, you kind of that's an advantage for UCLA. You're without Cam Morra, so you have to mix up your doubles lineups a little bit, although they've gotten some familiarity with that. And look, I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, you lose a match from 6-0-3-0 with an experienced transfer. There's nothing really more to say. I mean, this is a program that's been consistently making the NCAA semifinals the last few years. They bring in 3 grad year transfers, right? And none of those grad year transfers are able to contribute to this win. Cam Morra out of the lineup and Bryce Golova and Schvetz, the last 2 matches on, end up losing. That is certainly the opposite of the recipe that you drew up at the start of the season when you bring those players into your lineup. So, look, it's a really, really disappointing result. It's a shocking result. Yeah, there's not much more to say.
It's perfectly put. It's the first tough loss Coach Ashworth and this Duke program have had in a really long time. And again, they've got a
First tough
lot.
like postseason
No,
loss.
NCAA loss. NCAA
Yeah.
loss, I'm saying. I agree with you. And it'll be fascinating because a lot of these pieces are back next year. And to see
Mhm.
how this group rebounds. And again, it's so fascinating. Obviously, coming over from the Ivy Leagues, they were big names, highly ranked. It's not the same as when you face that pressure of 3-all and you're the home team and you're the 6th seed, and you do have to see it to believe it. And this is just another reminder of that fact that Stachowiak, Broom, and Furman, that's the exception, not the rule. That's like the one time where it all clicked perfectly for a bunch of transfers coming in. And I just think this highlights that fact. I agree. There's no need to beat up on Duke. There's no need to beat up on Schvetz. Everyone saw the match. There's no doubt this was unexpected. So much credit to UCLA. But again, ultimately, Duke able to advance. That's upset number one. Spent some.
UCLA able to advance.
Thank you, UCLA. Oh, look, this is 11th podcast of the day. I'm not going to be able to speak English
I'm
going
just here to
forward.
keep you honest.
Yeah, that's all I ask for. No, needed correction. UCLA advancing to the round of 16. By the way, what a bailout. Like, God, this UCLA team's now going to be probably top 16 team in the rankings at the end of the year. And now they're going to get to host a kickoff region probably. And it's just like all those, they don't all go away, but it's just like you slowly work your way back into the mix. So the lifeline extended after, again, a tremendous victory for this UCLA program. Let's move on, though, to Miami, site of our other top 16 seed being upset in this opening weekend. I know a guy who said on a podcast previewing the NCAA tournament, watch this weekend, if for nothing else, that Auburn's going to play 4-3 matches. And you said the first round was going to get tricky. It was. They dropped doubles. They earn a 4-3 victory. Uh, Miami, it's a little different script. They win the doubles, 5 straight set matches, comes down to Adeline Flack at 6. She wins that match in a deciding third. Auburn, it's 8th and 9th 4-3 matches of the season, Jay. They get through Sweet 16. Your reaction?
Well, it was an impressive weekend for Auburn, particularly to get that win over Miami without splitting the top two, right? Both Arsenal and Ansari lose at 1 and 2. And that had sort of been the recipe, I felt like, for the most of this season, is that they were probably going to find a way to eke out doubles. They flipped some of their doubles this NCAA tournament, but split Arsenal and Ansari at 1 and 2. DJ Bennett has been a rock for them over the kind of back half of this season. She got a phenomenal win over Fenning there. And then they got production from, Okotoyi and Flack getting the clinch there, the experience. So I think a really good performance from Auburn, but it was the sort of performance I expected, with the exception of DJ Bennett, which I thought was outstanding. The rest of it was what you would expect. I felt like it was more of a disappointing performance from Miami. And I think that this is sort of a second straight year. I felt like, they've had flashes of brilliance in the regular season and sort of had like a ho-hum postseason.
Yeah, it's a disappointing loss, especially because, Noel gets a straight, they get straight set wins, I think, at 1 and 2.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I mean, they get 3 straight set victories. And, again, they're a team that feels like they could get 4 singles victories on the right day against any team, and to lose 2 straight set matches and again have the deciding third set match at home and not get through there. That's a tough loss. I'm a little less critical, I think, of Miami coming out of this one than Duke, just because this is the Auburn recipe. This is what they do. And, again, to get different contributions from Bennett, from Okotoye, who both earned straight set victories over Fenning and Bach. I mean, they dropped 6 games combined against
Yeah.
Fenning and Bach Collins. That's ridiculous. And, again, Carnicella, obviously, what she's done all season long as well. Man, it's a credit to Caroline Lilly and this Auburn group, whether it's Flack, whether it's Arsenault, whether it's Ansari. And this is a group that I think everyone's back for them next year, and they bring back Celine Ovunk from
Yeah.
the injured reserve. Another team that is now, by virtue of probably locking up a top 16 seed, God, are they well positioned to make another jump forward next year, be in top 8 contention. It's a really good win. It's a really good weekend. And, again, it's going to be fun to watch this team travel to NC State, because they certainly believe on any given day they can match up with anyone Any additional thoughts on this region? Are you ready to rapid fire and move on?
Yeah, you know me, middle name efficiency.
All right, then let's middle name efficiency the rest of the way here. We're just going to go by ranking 1 through 16 rest of the way. We'll rapid fire through all the thoughts. UNC women, pretty straightforward. 4-0 wins in each of their matches. Obviously, 4-0 over Old Dominion. Now, Sasnouskaya did win the first set over Brantmeier in their battle at the #1 spot. We also got to see the new doubles teams unleashed. I'm not like, again, I could do 10 minutes on why Caroline Lilly is my favorite interview, but I could also do 10 minutes on why Tyler Thompson today was one of my favorite interviews I did. Literally out of fear of you calling me out for not doing it, I asked him about the lineup. I asked him
Oh,
about
good.
all of it, Jay. So, yeah, I knew you were gonna say that because I mean, like, you didn't chicken out, and there were like, listen. I mean, just listen to the shows, folks. I didn't chicken out, is what I'm saying thus far. I'm feeling confident.
I'm holding your feet to the fire, everyone. I'm doing it for in the name of journalism.
I, by the way, I didn't say I didn't appreciate it. It's a good thing. Like, I was like, I owe it to Jay to ask these questions.
Thank you.
Anyways, UNC opening weekend thoughts.
No notes, other than I did think it was notable that Brett Meyer lost the first set. Tan Gillig was struggling as well there at 3. I think those are two positions that I will be watching for as they move into this match against Florida and for the duration of the NCAA tournament. But other than that, pretty straightforward.
Scotty, Tran, Yarlagadda, outdoors. Pick your 5 and 6.
Uh, Scotty is in, and then depends on matchup for Yarlagadda and Tran.
All right, that's fair enough. Well, I agree. I'll also say this. I think it's been pretty public. Sasnouskaya in the transfer portal got like everyone wants Sasnouskaya on their team. Probably again as out there as anyone in terms of up there hot commodity in the portal. A&M #2 seed, again, they advance fairly comfortably as well. You look for the Yankees this past weekend. 4 over Quinnipiac, 4 over Baylor. Baylor really fun 4-3 win over SMU. Thoughts on the region? Thoughts on the Yankees?
Well, that was one of the first round matches I had circled as, watching for Baylor and SMU. Scotty B got me in the chat. I know Baylor got that match. I predicted SMU would come away with the win. But yeah, I mean, pretty straightforward result from Texas A&M. I have 8 schools I have notes for. Texas A&M is not one of them.
All right. By the way, Scotty B, you bring him up. Great comment from him. If we did, ESPN's first take,
Mm-hmm.
the Stephen A. Smith take coming out of the opening weekend, if this was college basketball, he points out 2 of the upsets from the ACC. This will be a quick tangent. Is the ACC overrated, Jay?
I might have texted that to Ethan and gotten a rage response about why that was not true. And but look, that is the take, right? Of like, ooh,
that's the first take.
Puts a dent in this. The ACC is the best women's conference in the country. I don't know about this anymore. We'll see.
One of Skip Bayless or Stephen A. would have said it, so we had to say it here on this show. Shout out to Scotty B for the contribution. As always, yeah. Look, Aggies look good. They've looked good all season long. Now, do I think they've looked great since the UNC semifinals? I don't know if I've seen great tennis the way I've seen, obviously, from a UNC, from an NC State, which is our tier 1A, but they are really, really, really good. And again, to beat them, you got to take the doubles point, because I don't know how you're going to find 4 singles victories against them when Stoyana and Goldsmith and all these players are just peaking the way that they are. That's your #2 seed. #3 seed, NC State, your preseason pick, as I like to remind everyone, to win the NCAA championship. They looked the part. 4-0 victories for them over South Carolina State and Kansas. Thoughts?
Yeah, they're up there in the power rankings here, and just in terms of impressive performances. I mean, they didn't even drop a set against Kansas. They were off the court quite quickly in those 4-0 wins. And look, this is a tough Kansas team, right? In the top 25-ish, and yeah, they had no trouble at all. So looking very dangerous.
Good win for Kansas over Charlotte. Shout out to Charlotte, though. Best season in program history, and a program headed absolutely both men's and women's in the right direction. But yeah, NC State, very good. In other news, water wet. Let's move on to #4, Georgia. I thought that Florida State match was going to get tricky. I perhaps should have anticipated it took 4 hours for Florida State to earn that 4-2 victory over Illinois. You do wonder how much was left in the tank. I mean, Georgia looked like a tier 1A team. 4-0 over A&M, 4-0 over Florida State. Thoughts on the Bulldogs, or the Dogs, I should say. I did that in the pod too. Again, 11 interviews, tired. Thoughts on the Dogs this weekend?
Yeah, I was gonna say dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they can figure out doubles, right? We've said this all season, it's gonna be very tough to crack because they have a very strong uh singles lineup, and they feel like they can get two, if not three, of those top three singles positions against any team in the country. And you have someone like Meg Kowalski, that fifth year, who it's just impossible for me to imagine her losing a match here in the NCAAs. So, look, they look very good.
Double-digit win streak for Kowalski. Yeah, she has been excellent. And
Yeah, and she struggled at indoors, right? And she struggled a little bit immediately after indoors, but since then she's been really, really solid.
DraftKings has her 25-1 to be the next Georgia assistant coach, by the way, with the news. And since we're talking Georgia, what do you make? Jeff Wallace obviously announcing his retirement, one of two Division I women's coaches in history with 800 plus victories. It's also announced current associate head coach Drake Bernstein going to take over as the next head coach. What was your reaction to that?
Well, what a phenomenal career Jeff Wallace has had at Georgia. Part of so many successful programs, helped to build the women's program there for as long as he's been there. Drake has been a staple of Georgia, period. Right? From the area, played at Georgia, been coaching at Georgia for over a decade now. So it felt like a slam dunk, and they certainly like to keep it in the family there in Georgia. They have all, former Georgia alums coaching. So, congrats to Drake. Look forward to what he does with that program.
Pretty sure his first interview was with us, folks, now available on the Cracked Interviews podcast. So be sure to go check that out. Number 5, Michigan. Got a little testy against an ACC foe in Notre Dame. Ultimately, though, the Wolverines are able to progress 4-1 victory. Felt like when that match went indoors that it was over. But, again, thoughts on the Ann Arbor region?
That was a very close 4-1. I do
Yeah.
think if they had been against, again, Michigan got a cushy draw. If they had gotten any other of these, if they had gotten an Oklahoma State, Michigan's not in
I
this
think
tournament
that's
anymore.
I think that's a bad example because Oklahoma State they've played twice. So
Never outdoors.
yeah,
Never
but that becomes
outdoors.
but it's a totally different match because you've played them twice. Like that's I agree with you.
There's someone
That's
on
the
this pod
one that's wrong.
who likes to say it's very tough to beat a team three times in a row. I'm just saying, if Michigan had faced any other team, it was dicey. Okay, it was dicey.
I agree. I'm just saying, like, if you would have said Georgia Tech, I wouldn't have said anything. Oklahoma State's just the one because you played twice. It's like that's the one
No,
outlier. Um,
4 months ago.
yeah, look, I'll say this: Jaden Brown was really good, and again, given she's been battling health injuries all season long, like every win from Jaden Brown you'll take, and the new doubles lineup is working for this Wolverines team. Another deficit overcome, so they take that doubles point. They were battling, and again, Notre Dame didn't blow them out anywhere. Notre Dame was battling and forcing third sets, but for a Michigan group that got to the Sweet 16 in 2021 but lost to Pepperdine pretty quickly, it's a different feeling for this group to get back to the Sweet 16, to get to do it at home. And so yeah, it was a little dicey. You're absolutely right. And they're going to have to play better if they want to beat Virginia. I think this weekend would be the other take as well.
Well, by your logic, they beat Virginia earlier this season, so ho hum, they're moving on to the
No,
quarterfinals, right?
other way around. By my logic, Virginia's faced it's the same thing where it works both ways. It's like you can't, all those extracurricular shit goes out the window when you've played twice already this season, or you already know the team. Yes, it's different.
So let me get this straight. So
Yeah.
Oklahoma State going to Michigan. Michigan's beat Oklahoma State twice. Michigan rolls Oklahoma State because of that,
I
was your
didn't say
logic.
roll. When did I say roll? That was not the word I used. I said the nerves are different because that's a team you know so well. And so it's the nerves of, hey, we got to play well to beat them, not the nerves of, hey, we're an NCAA second round team and we're a little nervous to be hosting at home. And you got to delineate between the nerves, Jay. But all right, that's enough on Michigan. Let's move on to our number 6 seeds, of course. I thought it was a pretty good weekend for our 6 overall seeds,
Was
except for the
it?
fact that it was Duke. They were knocked out. That's again 11 hours. 7 seed is where we're moving next. That's where I was in my head. I thought it was a pretty solid weekend for Stanford. And again, looking for the Cardinal, what they were able to accomplish, the 4-1 win over Oklahoma State, to be tested in that fashion and get through. Again, in my head, they were the 6, not the 7. I apologize. 7th seed to Stanford. Did you go? Thoughts on the weekend? You did go. I saw the
Yeah.
clip.
Yes, I was there in attendance. Look, it was a really, really good match, a much closer match than this 4-1 score indicates. Tough match for both of these teams. Oklahoma State, the first team out of those top 16 rankings. So unfortunate for them that they had to go to the 7 seed in Stanford. Stanford's been, hasn't lost since indoors. I was hoping to learn more about this Stanford team and potentially their path into, a deep run in the NCAAs. I'm not sure that I did. I thought they played really well in certain spots, but I didn't come away thinking, wow, if they had rolled over Oklahoma State like they did Texas, and you're going, okay, this Stanford team is a tier above any of the Big 12 schools. But Oklahoma State was right there. If they take doubles, it's a very different match, but ultimately it's good for Stanford to face some of these tests because they have, been rolling for so long.
A really good Oklahoma State team. They could beat, definitely on the right day, a bunch of teams in our final 16 field. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I thought it was a really good day for Blakina. That's a really good win for the freshman to get.
Huge.
Yeah. Outside of that, yeah, you're right. There are definitely still some questions for Stanford as we head into this super regional round. 8th seeded Texas. Thoughts on how the back-to-back defending NCAA champions performed? They get through pretty comfortably from a scoreboard perspective. 4-0 win over Corpus Christi, 4-0 win over San Diego, who of course knocked off Cal 4-1 in round 1. Thoughts on the Austin region?
Yeah, I was surprised that.
I think we have a frozen Jay for a moment. This has happened, of course, in the past. As soon as we have him back, we will come back here. Internet connections are half the fun, folks, so stick with us. You're watching our coverage of the opening round of the NCAA tournament. Welcome back in, everyone, to our latest episode, penultimate, apparently, of The Deciding Point. Jay, we were talking about the Austin region. What did you notice most? Texas, 4 over Corpus Christi, 4 over San Diego. San Diego, of course, 4-1 over Cal, notable in round number 1.
Yeah, that first round match with San Diego's win over Cal was the notable match for me in this region. I was surprised by the winner and also by the scoreline. And after that match, I thought San Diego had a chance here against Texas. I thought there were a few single spots in particular that they could potentially upset the two-time defending champion, but not to be. I think, look, Texas is playing their best tennis. They always peak here at the end of the season. And I thought they looked very comfortable in this win over San Diego. I think they come in with a lot of momentum.
I like Kieran looked a lot better. Nicole Kieran, their freshman at the #1 singles spot than she had all season. I thought, yeah, Shivatapan, Zainalova, like the horses are playing their best once again. And you're right, this is a team that has peaked consistently at this portion of the season over the course of the past 2 years. And look, that's what makes the matchup coming up this weekend against #9 Pepperdine so fascinating, because this is a Pepperdine team that has the last undefeated player in the country in Savannah Brodus, now 24-0 overall, 4-0 at the #2 spot. Pepperdine earned a pretty comfortable 4-1 victory over USC here this weekend, Jay, and that was a match against a USC team that looked really good in the Pac-12 tournament, seemed to finally be hitting their stride. Again, I still feel like we haven't seen Pepperdine play their best match of the year. Boy, that Pepperdine Texas match, it's going to be so good.
Yeah, this is certainly one of the marquee, super regional matches. Yeah, Pepperdine, look, they have just such a remarkable top three. And the questions were really about 4 through 6. And right now they have a Tom Chaiwat problem at #4. She's only won one match in her last 8. The good news for Pepperdine is that, Redlick and Campagna both look relatively strong there at 5 and 6. So this is an interesting matchup with Texas, but I thought Pepperdine looked very strong. Again, I called that USC upset over Pepperdine, given what we had seen from USC in the Pac-12 tournament, plus the fact that they didn't have Erin Cayetano in that, tournament in Ojai, and she's back in the lineup. I thought that would kind of put them over the edge, particularly with depth, but Pepperdine said no. So that will be the big question I'm watching for in the Super Regional, is how that depth holds up against Texas.
All right, fair enough. Well, then with that in mind, again, we're going to talk about that super regional matchup, so we'll get back to it in a little bit. #10, Ohio State. They faced a rematch from last season where they were upset by Vanderbilt. This time, the Buckeyes able to knock off Vandy 4-2 in the regional finals. A couple of straightforward 4-0 matches in the opening round. Thoughts on the Buckeyes, their victory, obviously to advance to the super regional?
Well, this was like the longest doubles point you can ever get in
I
college
think it's still
tennis.
going.
Yeah, it might still be. They decided to keep playing. Yeah, it was and I felt like once Ohio State lost that, I was like, uh-oh, like this could be in danger territory, but not to be. Ohio State looked really strong in singles. And I thought at that point, after, they took however many first sets, I was like, okay, this is not going to go the way of Vanderbilt. So a disappointing end for Vanderbilt in the end of their season, but a good win for Ohio State, who I think certainly as the 10 seed here, we haven't seen much from down the home stretch of the season. Good for them to make the round of 16.
Wilson 2-2 over Stevens is notable because she has that experience at that 6 spot, has played in a round of 16. She's playing a lot better to end the season. And yeah, it just feels like she is the option. They're going to go with that 6. They dropped the doubles point, to your point, to rebound the way that they did. 6 first sets in singles. That speaks for itself. It's a really good Buckeyes team. It's going to be a really fun match against Stanford. One, of course, I don't believe we will have, unfortunately, one of the few we won't have on our Cracked Racquets broadcast, but one I'm sure John J. Parsons will be at, so we will get the full scoop on, of course, next week. #11, Iowa State. It's the year of firsts. It continues. First Sweet 16 in program history. They're going to get to host that match as well. Looked really good in taking the doubles point over Wisconsin. 4-1 victory over the Badgers in the Super Regional. Thoughts on this one? In the for opening weekend. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think, people were circling that Iowa State Wisconsin match, Big 12 versus Big 10 to kind of see where, good measuring stick match. But I thought Iowa State looked really strong. Their doubles continues to look like something that will buoy them for the duration of this NCAA tournament. And this is now a team that, you saw this last year with Oklahoma, where you start getting hot and you just have that confidence, you have that belief, and you can ride that for a very long way. And one of the big winners of this weekend was certainly Iowa State, right? They are the beneficiary of that Duke loss. Now they get to host the Sweet 16, their first ever. That's a massive bonus for them. And so they come away extremely proud and happy from this past weekend.
And a bunch of different players contribute to wins. Kadlikova becomes the single season winningest player in Iowa State history in both singles and doubles. The year first. It continues for Iowa State. And again, comes full circle now as they beat UCLA to really kick things off during the kickoff weekend. They get the rematch in the Super Regional, which of course we'll talk about in a moment. #12, Virginia. 4-0 in name only over Princeton in the regional final. Top three matches all going to 3 sets. Again, a match that extended in well into a third hour. Thoughts on the Who's ultimately able to get through to another round of 16?
Yeah, well, Virginia had the cushiest region of any top 16 seed with the schools that went to them by ranking. No Elaine Chervinsky for Virginia this weekend, but that was a close match against Princeton. I don't know. I don't know if there's a lot to take away from this match. The one thing that I thought was impressive from Virginia, much like the Michigan team, is that they dropped some second sets and they were able to rebound and come back and get those victories. So that's what the better teams do. And certainly, if you're going to win, your next match, you're going to have to do that as well. So good rebound from this Virginia team, but definitely faced some adversity against a surprising opponent.
Good to get Wynn to the bottom of the lineup against Princeton, because that'll be the biggest question. That'll have to be the biggest strength, for this Virginia team if they want to make a run here in May. And so even Sans Stravinsky, again, good victories. And as expected, the Who's advance. Let's talk next about our number 13 seed. I believe, of course, that is Oklahoma. The Sooners, another team. They seem to be hitting their stride. They flexed against Washington. I thought it looked pretty good, Jay, in that 4-1 win. Staker 5-2 down in her first set. She takes it 7-5. I texted the group chat if she's doing that again. Uh-oh. Thoughts on the Sooners? And obviously, again, a Washington that earned an impressive win over Arkansas in round one.
Yeah, and Washington that beat UCLA just a week ago in the Pac-12 tournament. I thought this was a really impressive weekend from Oklahoma. They've now been undefeated at home these past 2 years. It very much gave the vibes of, okay, this team seems to be peaking at the right time. They got a few players there. I mean, doubles has been strong for them all year. Sleeth seems to be playing some of her best tennis now. Donna Guzman has looked exceptional this season. Freshman Julia Garcia is starting to click. It's dangerous, for the rest of this field. I talk about that belief, and you can start to snowball that belief into a deep run here. They're looking good. They're looking good.
Absolutely. 15, Tennessee, because we talked about 14, Miami already. Look, the goal for the Vols, get to the Sweet 16 this season. They accomplished that. The 15th seeded Vols, impressive victory, most notably, of course, 4-1 over Wake Forest to advance to this super regional battle against conference foe A&M. I'm very excited to talk to Coach Ojeda on Thursday. Obviously, a show we'll have for all of you. What did you think about the Vols here?
Well, they were a little overshadowed by the Arizona State Wake Forest,
Sure.
4-3 thriller. But ultimately, they're the beneficiary of that thriller because they ended up facing a Wake Forest team who I'm sure didn't have much left physically nor emotionally. But they advance as, we expected them to. And look, they've looked so good this entire season, and particularly down the home stretch. So looking forward to that match against A&M.
Yeah, the depth. And again, it's two teams that know each other really well, and no secrets. This Tennessee team will believe they have the chops to beat A&M, which is half the battle in these sorts of matches. And again, when it's a conference opponent, the fact that it's a first Sweet 16 doesn't really matter for this group. And so, yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a really fun weekend of tennis across the board. And obviously, last but certainly not least, Florida kind of just quietly did their thing over the course of this past weekend. A really impressive 4-1 victory over Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, the 4-1 win over UCF, which let's not, that's an impressive win for the Yellow Jackets. But, this was a match we circled as upset alert, and Florida gives Georgia Tech kind of the business in this one.
Yeah, look, I am not good at predictions. One of my fatal flaws is if there's a chance something could happen, I like to pick it, and then all of a sudden I've done that consistently over my entire bracket, and the whole thing is bust. But one match I did feel good about was this Georgia Tech Florida match. I felt like Florida was going to win this match, and I think it's tough to win matches there in Gainesville. And look, there are a few lines in this Florida team that look exceptionally strong. Sarah Dahlstrom has looked strong all year at number one. She gets a fantastic win over Georgia Tech's number one, Carol Lee. And 3 and 4, Dudney, Galis have had phenomenal seasons, exceptional records for both of them. Galis just a freshman, so they looked really good in Georgia Tech. And I think if you're power ranking these top these teams left in the Sweet 16, Florida for me is in like the top four. Not that they're a top four contender necessarily, but just on form and what they did this past weekend, I thought Florida looked excellent.
Yeah, look, I mean, Georgia Tech really did put up a fight, particularly, again, 3-3 set matches to decide things. It was close down the home stretch.
Mhm.
But to win doubles against that Georgia Tech team, to get straight set victories at 1-3, that's a really impressive one, especially over our Jane and Lee, who have both been really good all year
Mhm.
long. And so, yeah, shout out to this Gators team. I think that battle in Chapel Hill is going to be sneaky fun over the course of this weekend. Certainly one we have circled. And with that in mind, Jay, I do want to ask you last question before we move on. Any other what were your best match? Give me your three best matches, first round, second round, otherwise, of the opening weekend. Top of the head.
Well, I mentioned the Wake Forest
Yeah.
Arizona State match, that 4-3, I forget how far, it was Killingsworth, right, who had the clinch. I forget, she was down in that third set. Too bad for Arizona State that they didn't have Fontenelle in the lineup, but that was a great match for Wake Forest. Let's see what else comes to mind. The
Obviously,
Baylor.
Duke, UCLA, duh.
I was going
Yeah.
first round just to give some
Yeah.
love to those, non-second round teams. Baylor, SMU. I think SMU's had a
Really
phenomenal
good.
season. Really close to getting that
Illinois,
win.
Florida State, really good.
Really good match. Let's see where else.
You got to keep in mind, I only had like half the site, so half of it I'm oblivious to.
Washington, Arkansas. I thought was a
That was
really
really
good
good.
battle.
Mhm.
Um,
I
I'm
actually
just
thought
going to.
Oklahoma Washington was really good because Oklahoma had to play so well to win. It was just like one of those matches you really did know. You're like, wow, like that was
Yeah,
good.
yeah. They had to bring their best. You're absolutely right. Um, First round matches. Those were the ones that I felt like delivered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we named them.
Biggest flop was Cal San Diego. I thought that had 4-3 written all over it. And like San Diego
That was
kind of
the
comfortable.
oh yeah, yeah, that was the biggest underperformer for sure.
Yeah, he
Well,
said,
I also thought that Pepperdine USC match, I was a little disappointed that that wasn't a closer match. I was expecting more from that. So in terms
fair.
of second round flops, that was a second round flop.
I agree, but Pepperdine played really well too. And again, that sets us up for this next weekend. Super regional, Sweet 16, higher ranked team, not top eight seeds, higher ranked team, you have to specify, hosting the home match here in this final match before we head to the final site in Orlando. Top of the brain here, Jay. We're just going to go through what I find most interesting, and I'm probably going to be corrected as we go along the way. But of course, I want to ask you in each of these previews now as we get into our super regionals. And again, we're so fortunate enough. I believe we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these 8 super regionals on our Cracked Racquets broadcast coming up this weekend. I want to hear predictions. I want to hear swing matches. Let's start out with the barn burner. It was 2 years ago that this was the battle for the NCAA championship. Texas taking on Pepperdine. Texas, the 8 seed, Pepperdine, the 9 this match. Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern time in Austin, Texas. Again, it'll be on our stream. Which way you leaning? What are the keys?
Well, I want to say that Pachkaleva is the swing match, right? Playing against her former school in Pepperdine. But I would say if she is the swing match, that's a bad case scenario for Texas. They absolutely need to get 4 on the board. That's been a point for almost every team facing Pepperdine here. Pepperdine has an extremely strong top 3. That is not Texas's strength, with the exception of Zainalova at 3. I think Pepperdine has a very good case to win doubles. They've looked better than they did down the home stretch. Texas is without Marley Zane, the grad transfer from Florida, who was a big factor in this doubles lineup. Give me Pepperdine taking doubles, and they could sweep the top 3. If they only get 2, then give me Redlick to clinch at 5.
It's going to be a really good match. And yeah, looking across the board, you mentioned it. Zainalova now overall in the year, another 16-4 campaign. She's 6-2 in her last 10. You have a Rivkin who's 6-1 in her last 10. You have a Rappel. I mean, all the numbers are going to be gaudy. 5-1 in her
Mm-hmm.
last 10. Kieran really 15-5, 8-2 in her last 10. She's won her last 6 decisions. I mentioned that earlier. That's been the big piece. And yet, what? Who's at 1 now for
Cesar.
Pepperdine even nowadays? Yeah, who can even keep track? you probably still lean Czar in that matchup versus Kieran. You have to lean Brodus in the matchup at 2. All due respect to Shavatapan, Brodus is undefeated. Like, how can you
Yeah.
pick against her? And then, yeah, Chen versus Zainalova is a toss-up there
Yeah.
at 3. And, again, with how good Redelik's been at. So, again, you say 2-1 there, Pepperdine, you'd lean. But again, Texas has been so good at the 4, 5, and 6 spot. They're 17-3 at 5. They're 15-6 at 6. And for what it's worth, they're 20-1 at the number 2 double spot. Like, there are positions where Texas is really good, where Pepperdine has struggled, and that is what makes this match so fascinating. It's just like it's a perfect matchup for both teams to find 3 points. Where the hell is number 4? That said, the match is in Austin. Always feels like it's worth noting, especially in
Yep.
these super regionals. That's going to matter. Again, definitively, one way or the other. How are you feeling?
Well, I'm not definitively one way or the other, but I lean Pepperdine in this match despite the home court advantage for Texas. I haven't seen, I haven't seen as many chinks in the armor here for Pepperdine, although there are some. But again, I think that they are in equal oppositions, so that's what makes this matchup fun.
Quietly, this Pepperdine team 20-3 overall in the year, and it's like their 3 losses: UNC 4-2, Auburn 4-2, UCLA 4-3. For what it's worth, all of those teams are still alive in the 2023 NCAA tournament. Obviously, again, Texas has been very good as well. I think all of their losses are also still alive at this NCAA tournament. It's the barn burner. It's the one that feels like you're getting a guaranteed 4-3. You have established superstars, right? In the Broduses, in the Chens, in the Shavatapans, and Rapalus and Zainalovas, who have been around the NCAA championship block. It's Blockbuster, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, in Austin, Texas. Also available on our Cracked Racquets broadcast. All right. That's the clear-cut number 1. I'm going to stay in conference for number 2. Georgia, Oklahoma, the rematch. Now, this was a battle we saw at the National Indoors. All 7 points actually finished. Georgia finished with a clinch 5-2, but it's not the same Oklahoma team. It's the Oklahoma team we expected to see at the start of the year. At the same time, it's also kind of the Georgia team we expected to see at the start of the year, in the sense that Vidmanova, they're both in the doubles lineup now. And I do still wonder for both of these teams. Now, I do think the question was answered a little bit more definitively by Oklahoma against Washington. Have we seen the best version of this team at all this year? I think we've started to see it from Oklahoma. I think the scariest part about Georgia is I don't know if we've seen the best version of their team thus far, and they are already this good. I think this is another barn burner, Jay. Keys to the match. Which way you leaning?
Yeah, this one is much more intriguing to me than Pepperdine, Texas, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because one, it's in Athens, so
Mhm.
I hope and anticipate that there'll be an extremely large crowd there, and you just get the sense that this Oklahoma team is going to really embrace that underdog role. That is where they found success last season, as the underdog. And I think coming at the start of the season, they weren't underdogs in those matches against Michigan and Ohio State. And I think that was a mentality shift for them. They're a big underdog here, right? They didn't win their conference title. Georgia did, right? They're the SEC tournament title. I do think they're starting to play their best tennis. And that's a huge advantage, I think, for Oklahoma, who, look, there's going to be a big crowd and Georgia's going to embrace it. Oklahoma's going to embrace it. This one has more of an edge to me than that Pepperdine Texas match.
Yeah, and you're going to get a lot of rematches across the board also, which I think is going to make this match particularly spicy. You're absolutely right. Like, where this Oklahoma, the same way I've said on the men's, the Arizona men are going to thrive in Columbus. The Oklahoma women are going to thrive in Athens. Like,
Yeah.
that's a really fun battle. And again, up and down the board, like, as good as Vidmanova is, as much as you see her weapons and you just think she can blitz everyone off the court, you know how hard it is to blitz Donna Guzman off the freaking court, and how fun that contrast of styles is on court number 2?
Well, Vidmanova's, not really a blitzer,
But with
so
that serve, she can overwhelm people.
she can. But look, one of her losses this year to Carolyn Ansari. You know what
Yep.
Ansari and Guzman have in common? They will never
Exactly.
go away.
Which,
And so you look at Lane Sleeth and Leah Ma, they played this season at indoors. that was not a gimme for Liam
That was the
indoors.
one with the as I'm reminded, the
Yeah.
interesting ending.
Yes, there was an interesting ending there. So look, I think up and down this lineup, it's going to be very close. And you know who has, look, struggled all year in doubles?
Mhm.
Georgia. Who
Yeah.
hasn't? Oklahoma. Oklahoma is going to be favored in that doubles point. If they can go up 1-0, it's going to be very interesting. This just has the aura and the atmosphere of a Sweet 16 vibe that I think, supersedes what we were talking about with Texas Pepperdine.
Yeah, I disagree just because of the history between those two programs in the NCAA tournament, how good they've been over this past 3-year run. At the same time, I agree that this match is as good. Like I said, it was second most interesting, but they're both 4-3ers in my mind. You gonna give me the pick, Jay? Which way you leaning?
I do not see Georgia losing this match at home. So I'll lean Georgia.
All right, Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern time in Athens, a match we will have on our stream. Jeff Wallace's final home match of his coaching career. Again, has had so much success there. You really do hope it's a special crowd because both of these
Yeah.
teams will thrive in that environment, and both of these teams very much worthy of a special crowd as well. All right, I think those are the clear-cut top two, truth be told. Now it goes by degree of intrigue, and I just got to be honest. Iowa State UCLA is really freaking intriguing to me, Jay, because obviously, again, what this number 11 Iowa State team has done this season of firsts and, national indoor semifinals to beat Texas at the national indoors, to not play a bad match. They have not had a bad result go against them at any point this season. They've been really good. They're going to be really competitive in doubles. Obi, Kadlikova probably going to put 2 points on the board. At the same time, I don't know how good this UCLA team is. Like, they're the biggest variable right now in the entire round of 16 and the least expected team to get there, of course. Also, I don't know, Jay. I mean, I've been texting about this with you to ridicule, but I'm intrigued by this match quite a bit. Your thoughts on the keys, your level of intrigue, which way you leaning?
Well, it's a very deserving number 3 on this list, right? Because it screams opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And the narratives here and the storylines are so clear, right? This is a full circle moment, like we talked about earlier. And both of those teams have had very different seasons after that kickoff weekend. Iowa State has gone on to be the Cinderella story of the season, and UCLA has gone on to be, I don't know, the volatile problem child where like they show up on some matches, then other times they don't. And one of these teams is going to advance to the quarterfinals. And in some ways, Iowa State has now flipped this matchup on its head. They were the clear underdog at kickoff weekend. That was the highest ranked win in program history at the time. And now they're the favorite, right? They're the seed. They're the host team against such a decorated program like UCLA. So for that reason, and for just you know, the variability in this matchup, I think it's one to watch. UCLA, don't know if they've ever gone to Ames, Iowa to play a match
Mm-hmm.
there, but could be a first time. So a lot of firsts for both of these teams. I lean Iowa State here. I lean the home crowd here. Hopefully they talk about a team that deserves a crowd at this match. It's absolutely the Cyclones. I lean them in doubles, and I lean them in kind of the bottom half of that lineup. So I'll go Iowa State. I think it's going to be very close, though.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Look, again, it is fascinating the opportunity for each of these programs here to get to the quarterfinals, given the context of each of their seasons. Outside of TN and doubles, again, you're just never sure what you're going to get from UCLA. And there's a world where if Iowa State takes doubles, Kadlikova, Obi do their things that they have all year long, it's a quick 3-0 lead for Iowa State. And again, finding, can UCLA find a miracle 4 again? Certainly not, right? At the same time, they just did it. And we know how good Hans can be. And we know how good Wagley can be. And we just saw how good Vagramov was. And hell, give a freshman confidence and see what Luke Meyer can do with it. It's a fascinating matchup. One I know we're all going to be following the score lines of Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. You're taking Iowa State. Yeah, again, one I'm looking forward to seeing the result of, and it's going to be fascinating to see either of these teams in Orlando. All right, after this, it gets tough. Um, hmm. Let's go. because I love you so, we'll go with number 7 Stanford. And you mentioned the questions you have about them coming out of their 4-1 win over Oklahoma State. They're going to take on another OSU. This time it's Ohio State. Thoughts on the matchup, keys to it, which way you leaning?
Well, this wouldn't have been my 4, but I
Okay.
think it makes sense. Yeah, we need to see
Yes.
more from the Stanford team, right? In some ways, it was good that they get through that tough match, but look, I think doubles is starting to look pretty strong for them. Number 3 doubles with Connie Mom, Valencia Shu is really starting to click. Blakina and Blake have been strong all season. Maybe you're looking to see a rebound from Yepifanova, who took her first loss since indoors this past weekend against Christina Novak of Oklahoma State. So those are the keys that I'm looking for. If Stanford takes both doubles and number 1 singles, then I think they will be in a really good spot. I think Stanford's depth is starting to look really strong. And if there were doubts about, we've talked about that top 3 of Yepifanova, Connie Ma, and Angelica Blake this season. Yepifanova and Connie Ma didn't look great against Oklahoma State, but what stepped up was their depth. And so that will be a big key for them if they want to have a deep run here. And if they get doubles, I think this could be a quick match for Stanford, and they could find a lot of success there at the bottom of the lineup.
I'm sorry to keep plugging it. The reason I have this match so high is talking to a lot of coaches, players, not just for the interviews, but more broadly here as we approach NCAAs, making Orlando plans. A lot of people have talked to me about this match. Like a lot of people are intrigued by it. And look, like what Brizniak's done at 5, she's been about a lock this year. And again, Ratliff on the right day can look really, really good. Irina Kontos, you know what you're getting from her, just a tough out. And this Buckeye team is, Coley Allen, Isabel Boulay, they're going to fight. There's no doubt this team will not roll over, as we saw following the doubles point against Vanderbilt, to lose that doubles point and respond like they did at singles. Lesser teams roll over after a 3-day doubles point. They did not. If Stanford rolls, they're as good as we thought they will be. That's what I'll say. And again, I'm very interested because I don't know how good Stanford is. I know how experienced this Ohio State team is. It's what I'm interested in. You got a pick for me? Score line?
I'm leading Stanford 4-2.
All right, Stanford 4-2. I like that it's a lot of 4-2, 4-3s through our first 4 warm-ups, matchups. We'll go now to the other side of the Big Ten teams, still alive. Number 5, Michigan taking on number 12, Virginia. Are we betting something on this just because of the schools and our ties to this 2 schools? Again, what is it? Just pride, I suppose, is on the line here in this one. Obviously, it's a rematch, national indoors. Michigan 4-2 victory over Virginia. For what it's worth, I know she was injured a lot of the year, but Annabelle Shu did play in that match for Virginia at the national indoors. Lots changed
Julie
for both.
Adams did not.
Yes, that was the one that was absent, and you beat me to it. But thoughts on this one, the keys, which way you leaning?
Yeah, a good match for both, right? A comfortable match for both where they have, experienced each other this year. I haven't seen a ton from this Virginia team. I think it's helpful to have Annabelle Zhu back in the lineup. I think where Virginia has been strong is in doubles. I think Virginia's calculus here is in doubles, and I just don't know if they can take I don't know if they can take both of the top 2. I think they have Adams at 1, who I don't think is going to win. Subash, who's looked okay this season, but Jaden Brown's look very strong. And if you're going to beat Michigan, you need to take both, if not at least one of those top 2. So it becomes a question of depth. I've just seen more from this Michigan team. I do lean Michigan in this match. I think there are teams who could get this done in Ann Arbor that will probably lose elsewhere, that might not lose in Ann Arbor, but I don't think this Virginia team is one of them.
Michigan team's really deep. And again, if you don't have the big gun to pressure Miller at 1, you wish if you're Virginia to switch the matchups and it could be Subash versus Miller and the grinding nature of Adams versus Jaden Brown right now. That's not going to be the matchups, right? I believe Adams is back at
Yeah,
that
no,
number 1
no
spot.
switching. Adams is your number 1.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, Michigan's depth. I mean, Fligner, Jones, Serdon, Messerito. they're getting two of those. They always do. And like,
Yeah.
again, it's battles everywhere. And with all things being equal, you lean towards the home team. You lean to the team with the better track record thus far. I get the logic behind your pick. You say Michigan 4-2?
Yeah, I'll go Michigan 4-2.
Okay. I
Well,
did
4
4
4
what?
3. I mean, I
Okay.
think it's going to be, relatively close. The question is does Travinsky play, right? She was absent
Sure.
for Virginia this past weekend. You know, that's a spot that they could at least move people down in, right? To try and give their best shot at winning matches like at 5 and 6.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, just because these next matches are lower on my list in degree of intrigue does not mean I'm not fascinated by all of them. That's the underlying assumption for each and every one of these matchups, just to be clear. For me, at least. For me, I'm not
Yeah,
going to speak for you.
no, because I don't co-sign this order. We're going off Gruskin's order, so I might have a different
Can
opinion
I
of thought.
can I ask you your order at the end of the 8? I think it'll be a
Uh,
fun.
okay, I'll tell you I'll tell you the one when we get there that I would have had much higher.
Okay, well, maybe we're going to get there
Where are we
now.
going next?
UNC versus Florida, because I think that's the one you do have a little bit higher. You talked about how you think this Florida team is really good right now. Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Chapel Hill. North Carolina's only lost once this year. You all know the stakes. You all know the deal. Is this the one you'd have higher?
I would have this higher, and I think we talked about this a little earlier. What is most intriguing to me about this match is the recipe that the Gators employed over Georgia Tech. Doubles 1, 3, and 4. And if this Florida team is going to beat UNC, it is going to be doubles 1, 3, and 4. I think Brantmeyer did not look excellent at number 1. I think that, again, we don't need to get into the lineups, but that is potentially a vulnerable spot for them. And they showed that against ODU. Dahlstrom has looked really strong this season. And I talked about Dudney and Galis. Tangillig not looking strong right now. It would not surprise me if North Carolina pulls Abby Forbes at number 4 and goes, Scotty, Tran Yarlagata, because I think there's a narrow path to victory here for Florida that includes 1, 3, and 4.
Interesting. Here's what I'll say to everyone with the questions about the lineup for UNC. Really go listen to the Tyler Thompson pod. I really think you're going to enjoy it. He's very candid in his answer, and maybe you'll have follow-ups that you would have liked for me, but I'm trying to keep them all 30 minutes, so I got to stick to the script in those interviews. And but again, yeah, sort of team fights, man. They grind. Like it takes 3 hours to beat them. And yes, if this match is indoors, you might lean UNC 4-0. It's not. It's outside. It's again, all conditions equal. How can you pick against the Tar Heels against anyone other than NC State, who you've actually seen beat them? This is a really fun match. Are you doing it, Jay? You said if you see the potential for it, you sometimes lean that way. Is there going to
No,
be an upset?
no, that's my fatal flaw, but I'm not leaning it. The weather looks maybe a little dicey on Saturday, which is super unfortunate.
Mhm.
Gosh, how
This match
miserable
is
if this is
Friday,
indoors.
though.
Oh, this is Friday?
Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern.
What a beautiful night in Chapel Hill. Go out and enjoy some amazing college tennis. Looks beautiful. No, I lean North Carolina here, but because I think they, roll in some of those matches that we didn't talk about.
All right. Well,
4-1.
if you can't go to the match, tune into it. We'll have it for you on our Cracked Racquets stream. Another one we'll have NC State taking on Auburn. Again, a fun matchup between two on the rise programs. Which way you lean in? What are the keys?
Well, this one deserved to be last, but
Yeah.
NC State I think rolls in
Honestly,
this
it's
match.
just because I didn't want to reach for the Texas A&M button, but carry on. Yeah.
I mean, it's been a remarkable season for NC State. They have a nice draw here facing Auburn team who plays a lot of 4-3 matches. The match I'm most interested in here is DJ Bennett versus Rajecki. Both have been phenomenal there. That 3 line should be a really fun battle. Get to see Schneider continue in action. There's just too much firepower from NC State in both doubles at 1, at 2, and at the 5 line as well. I think that's going to be their quick path to 4-0.
So for Auburn, it's doubles 3-4-6. Hypothetically.
Hypothetically, those would be the positions. Yes.
Okay, interesting. You
Uh,
saying NC State 4-0?
yes.
Okay, fair enough. Well, then, last but certainly not least, rematch. This one should have been way higher. I honestly just forgot who they were playing. Again, it's been a long day of talking, but God, this match is really good. Number 2 A&M versus number 15 Tennessee. It's a rematch from the SEC season. No one blows out this Tennessee team. They're too good across the board. Obviously, this match being in College Station, you know it's going to be outside. Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern time on our broadcast. Keys to the match, Jay. Which way you leaning?
Well, no one blows out this Tennessee team except for Texas A&M earlier in the season. It was
But no,
6-1.
but I watched that match. There were a lot of like it was
Uh,
very close for a very long time. I called
it
that match.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
closer than 6-1, but
Yeah.
in theory, but Texas A&M has played a lot of those matches,
Sure.
right? And they've come out as the winner in a lot of those matches. They haven't had a lot of matches where they just like steamroll, with a bunch of straight set wins. But I think this is a different Tennessee team. It's again, not a fan of the super regional format. I think it's unfortunate that this is in College Station. I think on a neutral site, the calculus becomes very different. Just like we saw Texas A&M and Georgia, that match gets flipped on a neutral site. So I think Texas A&M does get through this, but this one has sneaky upset potential. I think that there's a pathway here. It runs through Tennessee's top of the lineup, most notably at 2 and 3. They have to get Mertena over Ewing at 2. They have to get Kutzer um, uh, at 3 over Cooperus, which is going to be tough to do. They put 6-4 in the third last time, and they got to take dubs. So those are 3 points. They got to find one more.
No, it's hard to disagree with that assessment. It's also worth noting as we wrap our coverage here of the Super Regional on the women's side, not a single host team has lost a round of 16 match in the 2 prior years we've done this. 2019, all 8 host teams advance on the women's side. 2022, all 8 host teams advance on the women's side. Now, of course, again, first time a non-top 8 seed in Iowa State will be hosting one of these matches, but in Jay picking just the one upset of the 8 in Pepperdine, know that he's actually going against the grain because we've never seen it happen before. And it'll happen eventually, but it hasn't happened yet. And so, with that said, final thoughts on what should be a really fun super regional weekend.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, right? We will know who makes it to Orlando. I'm excited to see a lot of these storylines that we talked about continue through. We kind of split the action between Friday and Saturday, so it should be a fun-filled weekend. Yeah, we will see who advances to the final 8 in Orlando.
I am very much in lockstep with you. And again, that's why our Cracked Racquets team is so excited to be broadcasting so much of the action. We'll have coverage, I think, starting 3 p.m. on Friday. We'll have coverage, I believe, starting at noon on Saturday of just the Division 1 action. We'll have Division 2, Division 3 action coming up for you starting this Friday. As again, we are thrilled to cover so much of the remaining NCAA tournament play across the college tennis universe. Of course, before we go, a shout out as always to our super producer, Daniel Westoff, who makes all of our coverage here at Cracked Racquets possible. A shout out to Dalton Thieneman for all he does behind the scenes as well. A massive shout out to you, of course, as well, my dear friend John J. Parsons, for helping us cover all the action, keep everyone up to date. I know you and Ethan had a lot of fun over on the No Ad No Problem blog this week as well. So for people looking for additional preview coverage, highly recommend you go check out Jay's content as always. Shout out to Ellesse. Shout out to Tourna. Before we wrap, any final thoughts, Jay? Or are you ready to hit this show on the road?
We can hit the show on the road, but not much happening on my blog. It's all on the podcast at this point, more of an audio format. So yeah.
Can I just say, as someone who started writing as well, and then the moment you taste the podcasting elixir, you're like, yeah, or I could not write, and I could just talk for an hour, and it's the same production quality. And so, been there, my friend. I promise the podcast is worth it. With all that said, for the fantastic John J. Parsons, our super producer Daniel Westoff, our friends at Tourna and Ellesse, and from all of us here at both Cracked Racquets and the Tennis Channel Podcast Network, I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. Jay, what do we tell our listeners?
Hey, great shot.
And we will see you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.